Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're unpacking one of the absolutely most glamorous and, well, ultimately blood-soaked financial scandals of the 1980s. We're talking about the Billionaire Boys Club. You know, if you think the modern era invented the whole fake it till you make it hustle, just wait until you see the absolute masterclass in deception we're looking at today. We're going to track the rapid, dizzying rise and the violently abrupt fall of a financial empire that was built on literally nothing but charisma, tailored suits, and just a massive mountain of lies.
Right off the bat, let's set the stakes here because this isn't just a story about numbers on a spreadsheet or some dry corporate fraud. This is a full-blown true crime tragedy. It's the arc of a genuinely brilliant young guy who set out with a pretty simple, albeit incredibly ambitious dream. He wanted to be a billionaire by his 25th birthday. But somewhere along the line, that ambition mutated. The pursuit of wealth became so blinding that it shifted from high-stakes investing into extortion, massive cover-ups, and brutal murder. And it ultimately ends with a life sentence in a maximum security prison. So how in the world does someone go from being a financial prodigy to a convicted killer?
Now, what's really interesting about this next part is that this entire disaster, the whole shebang, could have been completely avoided if our main character had just listened to his dad. This blueprint for a successful life, honesty is necessary, came from a hardworking middle-class man who saw his son getting swept up in a really dangerous current. But let's be real, when you're young, desperate to prove yourself, and you're surrounded by imaginable wealth, patience kind of sounds like a punishment, right? Jerry completely ignored this advice, and as you'll see, it became the fatal flaw that doomed absolutely everyone involved.
To understand exactly how the Billionaire Boys Club was born, we have to look at the incredibly toxic yet perfectly synergistic partnership between our two founders. Picture this. On one side, we've got Dean. He's a middle-class guy working as a car salesman. He doesn't have a genius IQ, but he has something just as valuable, relentless charisma, and this friendly, outgoing nature that literally gets him into any room. On the flip side, we have his old-school friend, Jerry. Jerry is the brains of the operation. He's brilliant, but growing up, he was a scholarship kid at the ultra-elite Harvard school, completely surrounded by the children of the mega-rich. He was mocked, he felt isolated, and he lacked the one thing his rich classmates had: capital. When these two reunite, it's like a match in a powder keg. Dean has the social access to the wealthy kids, and Jerry has this burning, resentful ambition to take their money and prove he's smarter than all of them.
So the turning point happens after a really humiliating night out at a club with Dean's wealthy connections. Jerry goes home feeling completely defeated, but then inspiration strikes from a super unlikely source. He's literally just flipping through a magazine and reads an interview with a young Steve Jobs. He's reading about overnight success, massive valuations, changing the world, and Jerry gets highly motivated. But, and here's the kicker, instead of inventing a computer in his garage, Jerry invents a financial illusion. He realizes he doesn't actually need a product. He just needs an idea that sounds smart enough to convince rich people to hand over their cash. And the idea he stays up all night developing? It relies entirely on using new money to pay off the promises he makes to his early investors.
Let's take a quick second to break this down because Jerry essentially built a classic Ponzi scheme. As we know, this means he created a financial shark. If it stops swimming forward and eating new investor money to pay off the old promises, it dies immediately. There's no real business here, there's no underlying asset generating wealth. But back in the early 1980s, these types of schemes were incredibly exciting to naive investors who honestly thought they had just stumbled upon a secret financial genius.
And this brilliantly illustrates their exact playbook for getting the Billionaire Boys Club off the ground. It was an absolute masterclass in psychological manipulation. Step 1, Dean gives Jerry a tiny bit of seed money, and they make a small play on gold. Now, step 2 is the critical hook. They actually lost money on that subsequent gold trade, but instead of admitting it, Jerry prints a totally fake check for $5,000 and hands it to a rich kid named Kyle right in the middle of a fancy dinner. He looks Kyle dead in the eye and tells him his initial $10,000 investment just yielded a 50% profit in only 3 weeks. The rich kids are absolutely stunned. They think Jerry is a wizard, and of course, that leads right into step 3. The wealthy friends immediately open their checkbooks, handing over $80,000 on the spot. The hook is officially set.
Once that first massive ejection of cash hits, the pacing of their lives just explodes. I mean, they aren't just faking it anymore, they are living it. They start flipping luxury German cars, buying them cheap and selling them for up to $60,000 in the booming US market. They rent massive, luxurious office spaces. They even set their sights on securing this huge $30 million debt restructuring deal with a company called Cozinco Energy. It's wild. They're wearing Rolexes, hosting lavish Christmas parties, and looking so incredibly successful that their wealthy friends actually start convincing their own fathers to invest their life savings into the BBC. It is just an absolute frenzy of aspirational greed. And then they land the whale, $4 million. Let that number sink in for a second. This represents the absolute peak of the Billionaire Boys Club empire. This staggering investment comes from a very wealthy, well-connected older man named Ron. When Ron's broker wires this money in, Jerry and Dean feel totally invincible. To them, this isn't just cash, it's the ultimate validation that their whole fake-it-till-you-make-it strategy has actually worked. They have officially arrived in the big leagues.
But here is where the music stops. So the crucial point is, the money wasn't real. When the BBC's internal funds start running dangerously low, and Jerry desperately needs to tap into Ron's $4 million to finalize that massive energy deal, he calls Ron's broker. And the broker is totally confused. He says to Jerry, "Is this part of your story too? Ron is a movie producer making a documentary." Yeah. It turns out Ron had told his broker that everything he was doing with Jerry was just a script for a movie. There was no $4 million. Ron was a complete fraud.
Can you imagine the sheer desperation Jerry feels in this moment? It must have been suffocating, because right then, Jerry realizes he isn't the apex predator he thought he was. He's the prey. Ron had set a brilliant trap. He wasn't just faking his investment, he actually used his fake association with the highly successful Billionaire Boys Club to secure a very real $1.5 million loan from a bank just for himself. So Jerry, the boy genius who thought he was scamming everyone, just got masterfully conned by an even bigger scammer. And because of this, the BBC is instantly bankrupt.
Let's move on and see how this builds, because it turns into an absolute nightmare incredibly fast. With zero money coming in, the house of cards violently collapses. Day 1, Jerry and his associate Tim go to Ron's house to force him to pay them back. It goes horribly wrong. Ron hurls a racial slur at Tim, and Tim shoots Ron dead. They literally burn his body in the woods. By week 1, the checks they wrote to their investors start bouncing. The panic in their office is deafening. Rent is due, and people want their life savings back immediately. By week 2, in a sheer, desperate panic for cash, Jerry and Dean try to extort an old friend's wealthy father who happens to be a fugitive from Iran. They try to kidnap him in a trunk, a huge fight breaks out, and Dean ends up strangling the man to death with a belt. By day 15, the walls completely close in. The police ambush Jerry at a bank vault and arrest him for double homicide. Just total, absolute chaos.
You know the old saying, right? When the ship sinks, the rats jump. And Dean, the smooth-talking, charismatic networker, does exactly what you'd expect. He realizes they are completely doomed, so he runs straight to the police. He strikes a deal, confesses to everything, and masterfully spins the narrative to pin the entire mastermind operation and the blame for the murders squarely on Jerry's shoulders. Dean claims he tried to stop him, but Jerry just wouldn't listen. It's the ultimate betrayal. While Dean negotiates his way out of the worst of it, Jerry's fate is sealed. The brilliant kid from the wrong side of the tracks receives a life sentence in prison for the murder of Ron.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a final thought here. Because while this tragedy happened back in the 1980s, the psychology behind it is completely timeless. Whether we're talking about flashy new tech startups, wild crypto crazes, or social media influencers flashing their wealth online, the fear of missing out, FOMO, is incredibly powerful. The Billionaire Boys Club destroyed lives because highly educated, wealthy people let their greed totally override their common sense. So ask yourself, if someone offered you a guaranteed 50% return in just 3 weeks, would you be the one to stop and ask where the money was coming from? Or would you just take the check? Thanks so much for learning with me today, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.